So this is our second lesson on inclination of the line, and I'll just look at a few simpler cases, but try and make sense of them, and then we're going to add one thing which is a bit more tricky. So we learned, okay, that if I have a line, okay, we measure this angle, the angle between the line and the x-axis, we call it the angle of inclination. And we learn how to calculate that angle, okay? If I know the gradient, which you know how to calculate, delta y over delta x, then I can do tan minus 1, okay, shift tan, and you get the angle. But sometimes we can do the other way around. So we can give you the angle, let's say this is 30 degrees, okay? And then I'll ask you to calculate the gradient. In this case, it's actually easier, okay? All you're going to do is tan 30 in this case, and you get the gradient. Okay? Now, there's a couple of things that can happen which are a little bit odd, and like specific cases that I want to talk about, okay? So, let's say we've got a graph that looks like this. Okay? So, that will be, let's say, 3. What do I call this equation? I don't know if this is going to show. Okay? Flat line, horizontal line. What kind of equation? Y equal to 3. Okay? Now, without even calculating anything, what will be the gradient in this case? The gradient is 0, isn't it? Okay? So then I can ask myself, what is the angle? This is a little bit tricky, okay? I mean, is it ever going to reach the x-axis? It's not, because they're parallel. But I can still talk about the angle of inclination. Okay? Kind of, yeah? So what's the angle of inclination? Well, I'm just going to use that equation. It's going to be tan minus 1, and instead of the gradient, I'll put 0. And I'll just get you to calculate that for me. So a quick trick on the calculator, if I put 0 in shift tan, I get 0. So the angle is 0. Now, what is the problem here is that it's never really going to reach the x-axis. So how can I talk about angle of inclination? But you can still intuitively understand that the angle of inclination is 0. It does make sense, right? If the line is flat, horizontal line, the angle of inclination is 0. So gradient 0 means the angle of inclination is 0. We all right with that? Cool. Let's pause here. Right. So for homework, I can't remember exactly how the question went, but we have one of those. Now, if this is a number, let's say 2, how would we call that line? X equal to. Okay, it's a vertical line. Okay. Now, what should I ask you first? Okay. Let's find out what is the gradient. How would you find the gradient? It's infinity. We spoke about that. You can, for example, look at 2 points on the graph. Let's say this one and this one. This one will be 2, 0, and this would be, let's say, 2, 2. Okay? Let's say this is 2. So the gradient will be the delta y, is 2 minus 0, divided by the delta x, 2 minus 2, it's 2 over 0. We usually say undefined, okay? But between us, we say it's infinity. Okay? It's infinity. It's infinitely steep. Now, how are we going to do that? How do I do what? I want to find out the angle of inclination. I want to find out, I want to find that angle. Now, without, what your intuition tells you, what will be the angle? 90. It's going to be 90. It's a vertical, that means it's 90 degrees to the axis, and you're right. Okay, theta is 90. But if I go with this, okay, what do I have to do? If I want to find a theta, I need to do tan minus 1. And I have to put infinity there. So I can't use that. You understand what I'm saying? So at this point, you can't use this formula because the gradient is undefined. It's infinite. So you can't do it. You can't do it. You have to use your head. Okay? Your common sense should tell you that this is 90 degrees. We all right with that? Yep. Okay. I'm just going to pause here for a second. So at home, actually it was the other way. At home, you were told that there's a certain line and the angle of inclination is 90. And then they ask you to find out what's the gradient. Okay? So what you can do is say, okay, I want to find out the gradient. Okay? They told you that. They told you the angle is 90. The gradient will be tan 90. And what happens when you put tan 90 in the calculator? What did it tell you? Math error. So you need to know what it means, math error. It's not that you made a mistake or your calculator is not good. It's just that the answer you get is an undefined. Math error is how you calculate it tells you undefined. Okay, so error. Okay, error in bracket. What do you call these? Inverted comma, right? Means that it's undefined. Okay, so you need to be able to say that the gradient is undefined, or you can even say infinity. Okay, right? Are we all right with this, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay. At this point, I'll just pause here. Okay, guys. So our next level, and this is pretty much it. Okay. This is the next level. We've got two lines. I have a green and a blue. We've got a, I'll just write this is going to be minus half. So I've got information about 2 points, 2 or 3 points, pump, 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 and pump, so 4 points really. Okay, this is minus half. Okay. And what I'm going to ask you is not to calculate the angle of inclination of the green and the blue, but instead, what am I going to ask you to calculate?
Where they meet.
Where they meet. Nasty stuff. This is the angle we're going to try and calculate. Okay? I'm just going to pause here and see what you guys think.
Is this going to be in the tail?
Okay, so Sina gave us the start. So the first thing we need to do is to calculate the gradient. Okay? The gradient of the green and the blue line. If I know the gradient of the green line, we'll call it alpha. Okay, did I show you this sign alpha before? Okay. So we're going to calculate this alpha, and then we're going to calculate this theta. If I know alpha and beta, how would I know theta?
Interior angles.
Hey, alright, well done. Okay, so Ellen, remind us that the exterior angle to a triangle is equal to the sum of the interior angles. So it's going to be beta plus theta. Okay? The exterior angle to a triangle alpha is equal to the sum of the interior opposite angles. So if I know alpha and beta, then I'll be able to get theta. So it's a long one. Okay, this is like a 5-mark question. Okay? Let's do it together. Alright. So let's start first of all to try and find out the gradients, the green gradients. Okay? How would I do that? I know these are 2 and 2.
Not and 2. Not
So
minus.
I can write down, this is what Booz will always tell me. So let's just write down the coordinates. So that's going to be 2, 0. And this is 0, 2. I think it's a really good advice. Okay? Write down the coordinates, please. Okay? And then you say, okay, 0 minus 2 divided by 2 minus 0 equal?
2 minus 2.
Minus 2 over 2, which is minus 1. Okay? Alright, guys? Okay, now, using this gradient, we can find alpha. But we got to be careful. Our gradient is negative. Our gradient is negative. So what we got to do is, I erased it here, right? If I have the gradient, if I want to know the theta, it's tan minus 1, the gradient. Right? Remember that one? So before I find the theta, I need to find out tan minus 1. What should I put inside here?
Minus 1.
Minus 1 or? Positive. We never want to put a minus, right? We're using a reference angle. And we just remember that we're going to have to do 180 minus.
It doesn't matter.
It does matter, because if you're going to put tan minus 1, what you end up, you will get a negative angle. Now that's fine, but you need to know what negative angle means, and we haven't done it yet. We will get to that next year. So ultimately, you're right, it doesn't matter, but that means you need to know what a negative angle means. Okay? So do yourself a favor. For now, just use the positive button. Tan minus 1 of 1, we've done an exercise a second ago. Do you remember how much one is that?
Yeah, it's 45.
45 degrees. But that's not our angle. 45 degrees is this. This is really 45 degrees. So alpha will be equal to 135. You did 180 minus 45, you get minus 135. So I'm going to write down 135. That's the angle that we want. Okay, so that was part 1. Next thing, we want to find out the gradient of the blue line. So let's write down the coordinate. 1 is given to us, this point. 1 and a half. What is this minus half business? What's the coordinate? Minus half is the y, right? What is the x? 0, because it's a y-intercept. So to calculate the gradient of the blue, I'm going to do
half minus a half.
Half minus a half divided by
1 minus 0.
1 minus 0, which is equal, if I'm not mistaken, to 1. No, it's not. Yeah, it is 1 over 1, which is 1. So straight away, you already know what the theta is, isn't it? Theta is tan minus 1 of 1, which is equal, you can maybe, it's 45. So this is actually 45. Okay? Now we're going to go to the equation, which we will call Aaron equation. Okay, and okay, we're going to write, substitute here, what is alpha? Alpha is 135, equal, what is beta? 45, plus theta. Yeah, you're right. Rearranging, theta equal 135 minus 45, and that's 90. And that's the answer. 5 marks, calculating gradient, angle, gradient, angle, maybe 6 marks. Maybe 6 marks. Okay, guys?
No.
Right, I'll pause here. Alright, see you next time.